This guy? That might be your first thought. If you've given any thought to sex work at all, you might not expect to hear about this from somebody like me. I'm a business owner. I just turned 50. I've got an MBA, and I'm a member of a chamber of commerce. It's all pretty boring, actually. But today, I'd like to invite you to reflect on your assumptions about somebody like this guy and open your mind to a world of untapped talent. Here's another fact about me. I have a history of sex work. In fact, I was a sex worker more than once, and I've been fired for that history. In 2005, I was hired for a role that aligned to my design and brand expertise. I had credibility, some awards. I'd been working for a few months when somebody from the sales department decided, for whatever reason, to do an online search of my name. Now, this is 2005, so reputation checks weren't really part of standard operating procedure. Today, a Google search can undo a career in a matter of minutes, but back in 2005, it took about half a day to destroy mine. My coworkers dived through various links, exposed past sex work, a quick email to the HR department, and I was called into a meeting where they terminated my contract. I was unfit. People like me are inappropriate for this company. People like me, like this guy. Here's the thing. I didn't try to hide my past. I am a lifelong sexual health and reproductive justice advocate, inspired by queer liberation icons like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, who led the Stonewall Uprising. I am proud of my advocacy, which included education and resources for people, primarily men, currently or formerly engaged in sex work. And because of this, I actually mentioned that during my interviews, so you can imagine my shock when they fired me. Right? So reflecting on this now through years as a business owner, I've come to think about their decision a little bit differently. It was never about me. It was a bad business decision, fueled by ignorance and prejudice. Their bias cost them a skilled, qualified, valuable employee. Their bias, a bias shared by many in society about individuals currently or formerly engaged in sex work, it empowered them to treat me without dignity, as if I was less than any other employee. The stigma attached to people currently or formerly engaged in sex work, it is not only bad for business, it actually harms our communities. Qualified people, men, women, non-binary, are either let go or not hired in the first place because of their past experiences. So it's time to rethink our approaches to people with past and present sex work experiences and open our minds and welcome their talents into our tables, our offices, our environments in the future, where it's possible for them to share those skills and talents as colleagues, employees, and leaders. Now, when I say sex work, what's the first thing that many of you think of? Prostitution, in back alleys, in the streets. And while that is an experience for individuals for whom the need for safe housing, adequate food, and non-judgmental support should far outweigh the public's degradation on their means of labor, it really only represents the tip of the sex work iceberg. And like all icebergs, there's a lot more below the surface. Sex work was a term coined by pioneering rights activist Carol Lee, aka Scarlet Harlot. And it refers to all compensated labor that is sexual or erotic in nature. So it actually often refers to a vibrant and vital pool of part and full-time laborers who are engaged in legal sanctioned spaces. So porn stars, strippers, they're sex workers. But also the video editors, the bartenders, the bouncers, they're also sex workers too. Your phone sex operators, your sex therapists, that bachelorette party dancer, all sex workers. Yeah. If you have downloaded an erotic novel for your iPad, you are supporting a sex worker. And with augmented reality and other technologies evolving constantly, the pool, the number of individuals with sex work experience expands every day. Every day. The legal sex industry puts billions of dollars into the pockets of individual US workers, and that is just online material. Bottom line, there's a lot of money to be made in consensual sex work. And I say consensual to draw an important distinction here between coercive sex trafficking. Just like most, but not all, farm and factory work does not involve labor trafficking, neither does the majority of the sex industry. Sex workers can make a good living with minimal time and in minimal investment. For example, webcam models. an industry that's been around as long as webcams themselves, right? OnlyFans, which is the largest and best known of those, has over 2 million content creators. Do you know how many of those are making adult content? 98%. And offline, strippers and burlesque performers can number 150,000 at any one time. And that was the starting stage for a lot of our popular celebrities like actor Channing Tatum or hip-hop star Cardi B. Altogether, there's a large labor force of people with current and past sex work experiences. Absolutely. And while 3/4 of those attribute their starting sex work to economic need, like every other form of labor, there's actually a lot of different reasons people choose sex work. My first time, I was 19. I was 19. And I was given the choice of living in a hostile and homophobic household or being unhoused. Now, this was common then, but sadly, it's still common today. LGBTQ plus youth are 120% more likely to experience homelessness than their peers. That's today. Sex work gave me access to stability and safety swiftly on my terms. On my terms. And hostility is not just at home. Sometimes it can be in the workplace. Many sex workers refer to their entry or re-entry to sex work as a response to hostility in the workspace where they face transphobia, ableism, or sexual harassment that either went ignored or when reported resulted in retaliation. And add to that the complications of pay inequalities or lack of representation in leadership of color, leadership for people of color, for women, for people with disabilities, for queer and trans folks, for single parents, and all those whose identities intersect, and you can see a very large labor pool where choosing sex work makes sense for a safe, flexible work environment. Absolutely. And people can move in and out of the industry as needed, like a bridge on a much larger life journey. That was the second time I entered the industry. I decided to do a year of service in AmeriCorps with a very small stipend in a very expensive part of the country. And sex work allowed me to supplement my stipend with the very few hours I had left after giving the rest of my time to a demanding but rewarding community work role. And I would return again for something that many of you can probably relate to. I paid off my college debt. All right? The cost of education are the reason 1 out of every 3 exotic dancers is actually working their way through school. Or that 5% of college students of all genders have engaged in sex work in order to pay for the cost of education. See, there are many different paths to sex work. Just like there are many different paths to working in a coffee house or finance or an auto garage. On my journey, sex work gave me access to safety. It allowed me to move to national service and do my national service, and it allowed me to pay for the cost of my education. Yeah. And I'm not alone. The conservative estimate of individuals who've engaged in sex work is 1 to 3% of the population. However, that number actually stems from a very antiquated application of that data. There are likely far more people who've engaged in sex work, people like me, than research even suggests. In fact, many people, all of you, may be working today with someone who is or has worked in the sex industry. And if you don't, or you aren't, maybe you should. You see, we are in the midst of a soft skills crisis. Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, they've all sounded the alarm. Businesses are desperate for employees that can communicate effectively, that can collaborate seamlessly, that can adapt to change and problem solve creatively. These soft skills drive innovation, productivity, and overall success. In fact, in a world of augmented AI, right? In a world of augmented reality, and not augmented reality, in a world of AI, the actual demand for soft skills is greater than the demand for computer and technical skills. And it's not just a theoretical issue. There's actual real consequences. The cost of an absent or poor application of these soft skills, 40% of your work week lost to conflict, miscommunication, and low morale. I mean, it doesn't take my MBA to figure out how that all adds up to low profits, right? Or why businesses are panicked because getting employees that have these soft skills is getting more and more difficult. Well, do you know what labor pool has employees that have these soft skills? People with sex work experience. You know, sex work is often dismissed as unskilled labor, but it isn't, is it? No. When one researcher asked a group of sex workers to list out their skills, they listed off communication and adaptability and problem solving creatively and entrepreneurism, and those all sound like soft skills to me. For example, sex workers are constantly developing their communication skills. Whether online or offline, they're developing a rapport with a diverse clientele. They are navigating sensitive topics with tact and diplomacy, and they are managing difficult situations with grace. In my own experience, it meant walking alongside a closeted person's journey to self-actualization and the emotional labor that it involved. In other cases, it meant building my adaptive and my active listening skills while working with a webcam client on their struggles of aging with a disability. And how does that translate to soft skills? Well, conflict resolution, effective negotiation, and persuasive, empathy-led communication in any setting. And we are consummate problem solvers, finding swift, creative solutions on the fly, sometimes in the most challenging and difficult environments. And then we also have that very sought-after entrepreneurial skill. Yeah, we are essentially independent contractors, right? So we are building our businesses, we are managing finances, we are building a brand, marketing ourselves, whether that is in a burlesque community or whether that's on the streets. That resilience is a form of entrepreneurism, to enact control in a world that challenges you at every interaction. Now, imagine what those skills could do for innovative businesses in our communities. See, that's the thing. The unique demands of sex work actually create desirable, meaningful, and transferable skills. By hiring and retaining people with sex work experience, businesses like mine and many others gain access to an entrepreneurial, resourceful, and adaptable pool of workers. Also, I want to work with people who see the humanity in others, from the vulnerable to the intimate. And while I work with nonprofit, healthcare, and education partners, research shows all businesses thrive when your teams can respond to adversity and challenges by recognizing the humanity of other people. If you are looking for problem solvers who can do it with empathy, hire someone with sex work experience. Companies with diverse workforces and soft skills outperform their peers financially. If you want to be competitive, hire someone with sex work experience. When the makeup of your teams reflects the lived experience of your stakeholder communities, you do better at innovation, at problem solving, at adaptability. If you want to be more innovative, hire someone with sex work experience. Yet, many people with sex work experience are reluctant to list those soft skills, often leaving gaps on the resume or in conversation. But hostility is not an incentive to share that you gained soft skills through your webcam portal creation or your adult toy store or some other method. Thoughtful, brave solutions encourage all people to share their experiences and skills in any environment. So, let's co-create a space, an opportunity where all people have an opportunity. We can do this by ending the stigma and dismantling barriers that prevent individuals with marginalized experiences from thriving. And we can start right now. Train and support your teams to understand, respect, and recognize that all people come from complex journeys. Implement and enforce anti-harassment and anti-discrimination policies along with training on unconscious bias. Invest in spaces that are open and accepting of all people. That's a great start. But we also must challenge the stereotypes and assumptions that are made about individuals with current and past sex work experiences. Trust and affirm that individuals with sex work experiences bring value to our communities, our businesses, our organizations, end the stigma. Then, end the fear. Create an environment, build and shape an environment where an individual's disclosure of a marginalized experience exists without threat of being attacked, stigmatized, fired. And then create dignity-centered processes to respond when someone's experience is disclosed without their consent. When we reassess our assumptions about people with sex work experience and open our minds, our hearts, our businesses to their skills and perspectives, everyone, including this guy, and all those people with sex work experience, past or present, whether they acknowledge it or not, they feel empowered, encouraged to share those skills, talents, and ideas, no matter where their journey has taken them. And that is a good idea for business. And it's a great idea for our future.